What's a ship that becoming canon would objectively make the source material better, and why? To specify, I don't mean ships that you personally would like to see canon. I think most people wish their ships were canon. I mean ships that the narrative would just be improved by a romance between these characters. Credit to Reddit user FluidShake5621 for starting this thread on the fanfiction subreddit. And let's go read some answers. Link and Zelda from Legend of Zelda. Any of the games, since I like them all to some extent, but particularly Skyward Sword's Link and Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom's Link. Playing Skyward Sword for the first time, I felt like Nintendo was right in my ear going, "We're not saying they're a couple, but they're totally a couple." Zuko and Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Honestly, objectively, they should have just left the romance options open-ended, but if anyone was going to end up together, that was the pair that had 3 seasons of build-up and thematic resonance and a whole mutual life-saving thing. Voltron Legendary Defender could have been improved by Keith and Lance becoming canon. The whole time the creators kept teasing there would be LGBT representation, and while what they did for Shiro was a step in the right direction, Keith with Lance was right there on the page, and would have been a cute, dynamic, fun ship with lots of drama and potential for tragic, risk my life to save you, heroic moments that could have definitely pulled at people's heartstrings. I think Naruto would have been better, and as a result, Boruto, if Sasuke and Sakura hadn't been endgame. I kind of genuinely think Naruto and Sasuke would have made sense and been great, but realistically, I know that would never have happened in a mainstream shonen anime. If either Naruto or Sasuke was a girl, there would be no question about it at all. That would be the canon love story of the century. Kishimoto spends so much time making it clear that Naruto and Sasuke are each other's #1 priorities. Tori and Jade from Victorious. Both Victoria Justice and Liz Gillies were aware of the fandom and the popularity of the Jory ship while the show was running. And, well, this is only speculation, I read somewhere that the actresses really hammed it up during certain scenes and episodes when their characters interacted as a nod to the fanbase. I suspect the production team was also in on it, as there was a point in the series where there was an increase in scenes and episodes that showed the chemistry between these two characters specifically, even though there wasn't anything inherently romantic happening in the scenes or episodes. Unfortunately, given that the show originally aired on Nickelodeon in the early 2010s, it was unlikely that the characters could be openly gay. If there is a reboot or even a reunion movie for the show, I really hope they'll be allowed to get together. Roy Mustang and Riza Hawkeye from Full Metal Alchemist, hands down. The author explained that they couldn't be together because of army regulations. But then Mustang became the leader. He could have changed those laws whenever he wanted. They're my OTP, and I'm still a bit salty that they never ended up together. Stucky from Marvel. It has all the beats of a romance, so much so that in What If, the writers were able to give Bucky's lines to Peggy without any changes, and could map Bucky and Steve's story onto Peggy and Steve without needing to alter it much. That said, I don't think it would have been handled very well if it was actually canon, as in they had deliberately set out to write their relationship as a romance after, say, Civil War. But honestly, I still think that Cap's arc would work better if Stucky was canon. As someone who doesn't read Stucky fanfic and isn't in the Stucky fandom and is therefore relatively unbiased, yes, I completely agree. I don't have to actively ship it to see that it just works, narratively, emotionally, conceptually. Like, it's all right there. I'm on a Lokius kick, so I constantly talk about them, but genuinely, Loki and Mobius in the Loki series. The evolution they go through, Loki's growth centering so much on the support and affection Mobius gives after trusting him and building a true partnership that works so well and flows so naturally enough that Mobius is an anchor of Loki's through time. The subtext is insane, but it being actually canon would have been bonkers. Harry and Hermione from Harry Potter. I'm a book reader, and even so, I still think Harry and Hermione makes more sense than the canon pairing. They have build-up and genuine connection with each other, whereas Ginny and Harry appears out of left field. It's kind of like Ichigo with Orihime or Naruto with Hinata. In both cases, where the female character has a crush on the male lead, and through a bewildering turn of events, the lead suddenly finds themselves in love with them, as if they had been since the beginning. It really soured the ending for me. Harry Potter? No ships at all, because then we'd get a different epilogue. Simbrock. Venom was one of the best rom-coms made in the last 10 years, and Sony didn't even do it on purpose. They're cowards, so they won't do anything with it, but we can dream. Goes without saying, but Aziraphale and Crowley from Good Omens. Though they are endgame, I think. One of the best examples I can think of is Swan Queen, or the pairing of Emma Swan and Regina Mills, the evil queen from Once Upon a Time. This pairing makes a lot of sense because Regina adopted and raised Henry, Emma's biological son, from birth. Meanwhile, after Henry seeks out Emma and brings her to Storybrooke, Regina and Emma develop a love-hate relationship in which they decide to co-parent Henry. In addition to this, Emma's parents are Snow White and Prince Charming, who are Regina's sworn enemies. I think that having Emma and Regina develop romantic feelings for each other over time, and then the ship becoming canon, would have made it one of the best same-sex relationships to ever grace the TV screen. Alas, the showrunners, who are both straight men, decided to have Emma end up in a romantic relationship with Captain Hook, their personal favorite character and fan favorite, instead. Mine is Bakudeku from My Hero Academia, because the narrative arc of them going from friends, to bully and victim, to rivals, to friends, to finally something more, would be incredibly satisfying to me. Also, there's enough narrative support for me to think it might become canon anyway. The give him back scene has a lot more impact in the original Japanese, and I am so mad they didn't translate it right. Controversial, but Amity and Willow from the Owl House. Like, I'm not starting fights with Lumity fans here, but not gonna lie, I genuinely believe that Amity x Luz ruined Amity. You know who Amity should have been with? Willow. You know, the girl she was once best friends with, which she then decided to act like a bully towards because of her mother's bad influence, and later becoming really awkward acquaintances. Mending that broken relationship and eventually blossoming into a romance would have made Amity a much better character, while also boosting Willow's position as a supporting character. Elle and Vivian in Legally Blonde. I mean, come on, Emmett gets far less screen time, and who doesn't love a good enemies to lovers? Especially where said enemies realize their true enemy is their mutual toxic ex. This is Legend of Korra if it wasn't made in 2014. Absolutely Bismuth and Pearl from Steven Universe, and maybe Pearl/Mystery Girl at the same time. Bismuth casual and the yellow pearl wedding armor definitely hinted at it, but come on! After all of those years of unhealthy longing, it'd be such a perfect bow if Pearl found romance that was healthy and unobsessive, fulfilling but not essential to her being. Doubly so if her romance wasn't all centered on one person. I love Pearl's human coven, I love Pearl, and Bismuth deserved so much better. Thorin and Bilbo, specifically for the Hobbit trilogy of movies and not the books. The amount of changes and chemistry between the characters in the transition to film ironically caused a situation where the tragedy would have been enhanced by a doomed romantic subplot between the leads, rather than the doomed romantic subplot between Keely and Toriel, which just felt like it was thrown in to distract and course-correct from aforementioned chemistry. I am a Warriors fan, or Warrior Cats fan, and I really think Mothwing and Leafpool should have replaced Crowfeather and Leafpool. Like, why can't we have more gay relationships? Like, I want to see gay cats have a forbidden relationship. Is that so wrong? Riddlebird, or Nigmobblepot from Gotham. It was supposed to be canon. More canon than it already is. I get irrationally upset every time I think about them, because they should have been together. They still try to kill each other several times, but still together regardless. I almost don't want to finish watching the show because it's pretty clear they wanted them together, but Fox said no. Them being together would have turned the show from great to basically a masterpiece in my eyes. Kara and Lena from Supergirl, also known as Supercorp. It was made a point from season 1 that Kara, 1, wanted to fall in love, and 2, never thought she would. Despite all the other Arrowverse heroes getting substantial romances with mostly happy endings, she ended her series alone. Meanwhile, she had an epic friends to enemies to friends arc with Lena. From both a thematic perspective and a chemistry perspective, the ship worked, and there's no doubt in the minds of many that a straight ship with that dynamic would have absolutely been made canon. It seemed many of the writers wanted it. One who wrote a follow-up comic even signaled that a date that Lena mentioned was intended to be with Kara, but were stopped by the CW or DC. Luke Skywalker and anyone. Someone who wouldn't let Luke run off and become a hermit for a decade or two, who'd hunt him down and get him some therapy. Merthyr from Merlin. They practically were together. They said the most romantic things to each other, were willing to die for one another. If there had been a final episode kiss or a I love you moment as Arthur died, it would have made the show 100% better. Bleach would have felt a whole lot more complete and cohesive had Ichiruki been endgame. Which is freaking hilarious because I've never shipped them. In fact, I was always a Renruki shipper. But man, that ending made me mad. How do you write all that freaking development and the most beautiful symbolism, and in the end, just squander it? Kubo, are you okay? Story-wise, this was an incredibly bad decision. I'm really torn about this. On the one hand, yes, you're 100% right that Ichiruki would have been the most logical conclusion of the narrative. On the other hand, I love that the most popular shonen manga of all time had the male and female leads who were platonic best friends who would risk their lives for each other without having romantic feelings, and that the romantic partners understood and supported it. The only one I can think of is Legoshi and Louis from Beastars. I genuinely thought it was going that route in some scenes because it felt like the natural progression of their character arcs. It's not that I dislike the canon relationship, Legoshi and Haru, but everything they represent thematically can be applied to Legoshi and Louis, and to do it better. Andy and Haley from Modern Family dated for roughly a season, so technically they were canon, and it should have stayed that way. Instead, Haley ended up back with her dumb ex-boyfriend. Adora and Glimmer from She-Ra, Rock Lee and Sakura from Naruto, Rose Garden from Ruby, White Knight from Ruby, Korra and Mako from Legend of Korra, Adora and Bow from She-Ra, and Black Sun from Ruby. That one's controversial. Every ship that was queer-baited before the creators punked out. By which I mean actually, these characters were teased to be queer and interested in each other, but neither fact was ever confirmed queer-baited. Not just these characters are canonically queer but they're not kissing the right person. Or, I decided with no encouragement from canon that these characters have chemistry and therefore the creators were lying to me by not making it happen situations that people like to harass creators over these days. I'm going to go against the grain and say none of them. I desperately wish I could un-canon some of my ships that became canon, in some cases long after the original material ended, but they decided to do a sequel or next generation type continuance and threw it in. I actually strongly prefer my ships to be in the possible in a canon-compliant / post-canon setting, but not confirmed or no details sort of zone. I actually wish one of my fandom's ships hadn't been made canon. Apex Legends, Fuse and Bloodhound. The fic I was writing for it was one of the more popular ones in the fandom, and the ship became canon mid-fic. The fandom got really weird with drama around that time, and I got some weird DMs and just was uncomfortable with a lot of the discourse. All the negative energy kind of killed things for me, and on top of getting sick and taking a hiatus, I just didn't have the desire to go back and finish it when I returned. I also think the thinly veiled pining and hinting made it more exciting for people. None. I'm not here for done deals. I crave the yearning. I totally get that. Sometimes a ship just feels better when it hasn't sailed. And that way the source material can't mess everything up. Big thank you to my Patreon members, my Little Ruse, Kuski55, Fallen Vexen, Sam, Donka42, I Am a Noodle, John Huang, and Fantastic Wreck. Thank you so much for your extra support on Patreon, it means the world to me. I wish you all the very best as always. I hope you're doing great. The same goes to my YouTube channel members, my Mini Ruse, AD, Taylor Thompson, Foxstar Killer, Tibella, and Logan. Thank you so much for your extra support. I'm so glad to have you be a part of my channel. I hope you guys are doing well. And again, I'm just very appreciative of you all. And thank you to everyone else who watched. I hope you had a good time. And let me know, what are some ships that you think, being made canon, would have improved the narrative? Or do you think no fandom should have romance and everyone should just be platonic friends forever? Let me know your thoughts, and I will see you in the next video.